So thanks to everybody for being here. I am really happy to be hosting what is our second live Zoom conversation related to the exhibition Applied Forces, which was at Arlington Arts Center when we unfortunately had to close early, like so many places. So hi to Hanji Kim, who's joining us from Colorado. Hi to everybody in the audience. And I think I know almost everyone, but just in case, my name is Blair Murphy, and I'm the curator of exhibitions at Arlington Arts Center in Arlington, Virginia. And while we are closed to the public, we're trying to do some new online programs to continue our mission of engaging our audiences with contemporary art and contemporary artists. Like I mentioned, this program is sort of in conjunction with this exhibition Applied Forces, which we had up and did wind up closing about 3 weeks early when we closed to the public back in mid-March. But I am sort of happy to have this opportunity to try to sort of expand the life of the show and continue the conversation through these online shows or online programs. And I'm especially happy to get to talk to Hanji Kim, who is, like I mentioned, based in Colorado. So she was not able to make it to the gallery talk. So it's nice to have this other format to actually get to interact. Laura is a PhD candidate in intermediate art writing and performance at the University of Colorado Boulder. So she's in Boulder. And I'm really happy to be with her today. Laura, do you want to start out with a quick intro?
First, thanks for having me, Blair, and everyone who are here today. And I really wish I could have been able to make it to the exhibition, and I received all the documentations, and it looks amazing. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to be able to share some of the more of the way I think, the way I make, and thought I'd start just to kind of preface you and give you a better understanding of where I'm coming from with the works that are in the exhibition. I have a PowerPoint, which I will try to connect sound as well. So there we go. Are you able to see it? No, not yet. I think I have to share. There we go. Is that happening?
Yes, it's happening.
Wonderful. Okay. So yeah, my name is Hanji Kim, and I like to always preface that I'm an earth dweller, a living human, a Korean American multimedia artist. And my art project's primary language through performance that specifically centers around the body, that reimagines a lot of human, non-human interaction, and it addresses a lot of digital culture and emerging technologies that often have the tendency to mask the human behind the screen, or whatever technology we're being translated into. And the outcome often takes various forms of digital art, new media, writing, and various ways, very expansive. And a lot of my primary motivation to make starts from trying to understand the world from various viewpoints, perspectives as possible. And that starts from being curious about why things are the way they are, knowing what I know, and questioning how things have really arrived to be where they are. And this starts from being compassionate about everything and everyone around me, and not taking anything for granted or as a given. And so these kind of explorations often start from the everyday, from my body, going through daily lives, cleaning dishes and having, oh yeah, I have to make work about this. But not even knowing why I need to do that. And so a lot of these works that I create are often in direct collaboration that includes humans, non-humans, objects, things, and nature. I've been very amused by squirrels lately, being in Boulder, Colorado, after living in the Bay Area for many years. And so I thought I'd start with a little bit of talking a little bit about my collaborations, which is a very essential part of how I make and create. And even here, being in this space, virtual space with all of you, I see as a form of collaboration because I'm talking and externalizing my thoughts. And so I collaborate a lot with myself, and that's a project you see called Synthetic Empathic Intelligent Companion Artifacts, Seika Human Interaction Labs. And it's a speculative virtual organization that produces very multimedia-based research work to reflect on the human-tech-human relationship, and also try to design non-living or living synthetic entities that provide companionship. So such as looking at a lot of emotions. And another collaboration that I have been involved with is called Sharing Turtle with artist Libby Rose Regal. And we kind of pose as a satirical art startup where our mission is to kind of rethink about human and technology relationship through, so one of our mottos is disrupting disruption easily and solving technological solutions. And so using that kind of Silicon Valley lingo and turning it back on it has been one of those exciting projects I've been working on. And another one is called Center for Emotional Materiality, where I work with artist Serbi Saraf and my Fleur, Carolyn Cinders, which is a collaborative site for thinking about how technology is impacting our emotional lives and how there's a lot of social and labor and human components that propel technology, and that we cannot forget that. And so, let's see, next slide. And so all of these kind of collaborations come together, they blob into these constellation of more blobs that often gets blobbed into various forms of expression. And last year I published this book with the accomplices and several coping mechanisms called Entering the Blobosphere, a Musing on Blobs, which uses blob, I can't even say it, blob as an idea, as a concept, as a lens to really try to capture it, which is uncapturable, which is unexpressionable, that is unknown, that is ungraspable. And it has two components, a blob manifesto, which is a blobifesto, and a collection of various speculative observations, which I called blobservations. And it pulls from various theory, language, and it tries to really embody the incomprehensible parts of language and tries to grasp onto the limitations that it has, or the non-limitations that it has. And it's been really influencing a lot of the way I think and I make. And this kind of idea of thinking through making has kind of blended it all into this current project that I have at Arlington Arts Center, which is called The Living Lab. And the Living Lab is my lab, but a living lab can be your lab as well. And so I often realize how it's easier for me to, rather than speaking through words or through written forms of language, that it's easier for me to use metaphors or audiovisual expression to be able to capture my thoughts, and through some sort of mediation that goes through my body. And all of that kind of fascination with the idea of unknowing, being uncertain about how I think, or even thinking about my own biases or things that make me vulnerable, or even like the process of making an idea and kind of trying to grasp onto it, something that's always fleeting, has been the centerpiece of this project. And I'll talk more about it, of course, through the conversation. But basically, it's thinking about the body as a laboratory that moves through time and space and the specific cultural moment. And various imaginings have happened that often is stitched through various speculative narratives and theories. For instance, Consume Like Everyone Is Watching, which is also a piece included in the exhibition, is what I call teledancing, so dancing with other individuals in different living rooms. And oftentimes I also do pose as different workshop instructors, speculative fitness instructors, to be able to kind of share what I am embodying and what I hope to be able to theorize through my body. And the high field low tech workout, as you see below with the yoga mat, it's me foam rolling with an Alexa. It's a 22-minute real-time video where you can watch and follow the steps and get Fittergized, of course, the piece that's included in the exhibition as well. And so for those who haven't been able to make it to the show, I have the piece here, and it's 4 minutes, and it's quite bearable. And we will watch it together collectively, as Blair says, and Sherry Turkle says, alone together.
Yeah.
Hi, I have a lot of energy. See? Take some of it. It'll be handy one day. How do I have so much energy? Well, it's actually pretty simple. What I do is charge up. So instead of just plainly watching the TV and resting, I actually point the remote towards me and power up. And if you want to really power up, get to the remote and press power up. And welcome back. Last session, we learned how to energize and power up through a couple simple life hacks. First was to receive energy, which is what I did to you. And second was to use an object, a technological object, such as the TV remote. For this session, you're also going to use available objects in the household, specifically used for consumption, to consume all of their energy. We have a banana for this session and another banana. These bananas aren't bananas anymore. They are objects of power, and we will receive their energy. So if you're ready with your own bananas, stand up straight, your belly tucked in, your back straight, and here we go. Move slowly. Slowly. In this session, we will learn how repetition is important in generating energy, such as that of the windmill. No wonder they can generate so much energy. And then, here we go. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Keep your elbows straight, keep your back straight. Be conscious of your knees, of your joints. Grab that energy. Grab that banana. Squeeze that banana. The harder you squeeze, the more energy you receive. Here we go. Faster, faster. Repetition. I'm already getting sweaty. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. The faster, the better. Here we go. Not really straight anymore. Once you feel the fatigue, it means that you have received 10% of the energy of the object. So, get some final touches. Pull it up. Be healthy. Stay strong. Positive. Powerful. Strong. Human being. Whew. Make sure your back is straight, your abs tucked in, and your arms are straight. Thank you for joining me for this session, and until next time, stay Fittergized.
Thanks, Laura. Video. I feel like I should sit up straighter now. Very conscious of my posture. So the videos that you're creating, like Get Fittergized, which we just watched, they're sort of playing a lot with and borrowing from a lot of kind of tropes and styles of online video. So that video, for example, was like you posted it to Instagram, it kind of circulates, and you've made it on your phone, it circulates online. And they're kind of these like short exercises or experiments, maybe more than finished pieces in a lot of ways. How do you think about that? Like when we were talking about the show, we sort of had some conversations about like, what does it mean to install these in a gallery? Like how should they be presented? I don't know, how do you connect them to each other? Or is there something that they're building?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like as I started positioning, working with my body as part of being a living lab, my relationship with the Instagram, social media stories have changed quite a bit. A lot of what I've been thinking about is how 15 seconds of thought, which could be in forms of a 15-second story, or 15 days of researching, 15 years of devoting to research, is as valuable in terms of what comes out of it as an idea, and that life is too short for that in the living lab. And so a lot of the kind of explorations of thinking about these spaces came from first experimenting with those spaces like Instagram, for instance, which I've been heavily involved in terms of creating spontaneous pieces, was started as like thinking about it as an artist studio space. So a lot of dance and play and writing long form, short note, like kind of form ideas out there. But also thinking about that anybody can do it, and that maybe perhaps sharing the idea that these even quick ideas can turn into something more, and making my thought processes and creative process transparent would promote that even more so. And so, and everything is, I always see my work, and I think we talked about it when we're installing the piece. You were asking me, how do you want it to be installed? And it's always so hard for me to think about that, because when I'm creating the work, I think about it in the action when I'm actually participating in it, and I'm in it. And it's always, for me, any piece for me feels incomplete. It's always moving towards what it leads to and what ideas it connects afterwards in hindsight. And so rather than trying to box them up, each project becomes like a word, sentence, syllable. And at the end, I'm writing a whole story narrative that hopefully connects into something larger at the end. And so because of that, yeah, my relationship with social media experiments, I'm really excited that those pieces were shown in your space because of that, because you're adding value to those thoughts that were temporary, but still valuing it as a form of creative expression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of the work you've made, sort of Get Bittergized reflects it, but overall, you're really interested in these kind of opposite modes or opposite states. So looking at how our bodies relate to, or how us in the physical world, how we relate to screens and technology. So this kind of idea of like online versus the real world as these two different states, or then also the way our bodies impact our relationship to our bodies, and our physical state impacts our emotions and our sort of thought process. How do you draw those connections, and why do you think that's important? They're sort of opposites, and you're kind of playing with the tension, I guess, that's there.
I think I haven't really thought of it as being opposites per se. I think we've kind of surpassed the time in terms of technological integration to think of them as even being more opposites, and that kind of makes, as long as we think they are separate, it'll be difficult for us to be more reflexive and critical towards it. And so I think in this, I like to call it a post-buttonless world in terms of the way we interact with technology, especially I'm talking about our mobile phones. I think screens and technologies transform our relationships constantly with the physical world so much, and vice versa, from, for instance, like policies that impact us in ways we don't even see it. And the language we use on those platforms in the digital space, and how it changes our relationship with, such as the word share, post, or like something. It's become a cliche, although they're very beautiful words on them, as as a thing before we were exposed to social media. And so what I think I'm more concerned is not so much about the opposition, but about how it is communicated to us and then how it impacts our daily lives. And such as, for instance, like technologies, the way and how it tends to try to predict how we behave, how it caters to what we want, and quantifies our experiences into these numbers. And which in turn, by making decision making so easy for us, it impacts the way of how we think. And I'm very much against strong statement I think it's okay to be indecisive. It's okay to change our minds, and a lot of these technologies that we surround ourselves with restrict us in ways where your shopping cart is running out of time. You're about to be logged off. You have to, within like 7 minutes, make your decision. Are you going to purchase this concert ticket or not? And so those things, and the way it changes our idea of like physical time and space, and how it impacts us in that way, and how we don't see it, but we slowly get integrated into that kind of culture. It's something that I try to always be mindful of, and that I try to surface through metaphors and through the work that I make. And another example would be you can't be obscured. You always have a camera that spies on you. Even like the act of protecting yourself through blocking your webcam, for instance, it's an action, and that is a physical action. And it's the way we frame ourselves within these rectangles and how it impacts us. And of course, there's a more physical part of it too, where you're holding your phone. There's a text syndrome. Like I'm sitting in front of my computer all day, slouching, and all of those impact the way impact our bodies, and in turn also impact the way our emotions are expressed, because a lot of what we feel come from here. And it is not something that you can, oftentimes we don't have words for the way we feel. And to be able to having to kind of subscribe to how we have to constantly calculate ourselves or compute ourselves, I find a little, it's blurry. Yeah. And so ultimately everything is connected and very blobby in the way I see it.
Yeah. And that is, I mean, so much of your work is created on the computer and is on these platforms, but then I feel like it's all a project to then also make people step back and be critical of those platforms at the same time. Get Bittergized, which we watched, is like a slightly older video, and some of the older work sort of definitely has this very satirical perspective. I mean, one thing I love about your work is that there is this humor, and it's sort of definitely more in that direction of like, it's sort of a satire of a lot of the sort of online culture, online fitness videos. And then some of your more recent videos have a slightly different tone. So maybe there's still humor, but there's sort of less of a hard edge. Like some of them they function more as almost instructional. Is that like, I don't know, do you see a shift?
Yeah, I think I definitely see the shift. And humor is something that can be deconstructed in so many ways. I mean, humor as haha, humor as watching something, laughing at yourself, but also I think recently the term that I've been taking is a lot of humor as resilience, and being able to bounce back and integrating that haha within you and owning it. And going back to the whole idea of the Living Lab, as I said before, I'm promoting that change is okay. And since my practice is so based on my body and how I move and how I touch things, how I feel about things, that those, it would be based on my mood, fluctuations, pulses, oscillations. And because of that, the tone shifts as well, of course. And I think it's only natural, and I would be very disappointed if it didn't have changed over time in many ways. But I think over the year I had a lot of physical challenges, and that has impacted a lot of the way I think about my work, and collaboration, and even the idea of community has come stronger to me than ever. And especially in this time where everybody is confined to their own, your body's your safe space. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing is humorous, because I'm making these connections with things that oftentimes may have only limited, it's not, hasn't revealed yet. And so for that reason, I think, it's been shifting and morphing. But I think it's always going to be there because the way I think is always surrounded around spontaneity and being playful.
Yeah. You mentioned, like, obviously the present moment we're all in, and these strange, sort of distressing circumstances. You've been thinking a long time about the relationship between our physical selves and these technologies. Do you have any advice for people now who, in this moment, sort of because of the need for physical distancing, are like tied to the devices now, like even more than they were before? There's sort of a constant, like, for some people, if they are able to work from home, it's now their main connection to the outside world. Do you have any?
That's a constant push and pull that I feel like I have, because it is a moment where we can change a lot of the way technology is being used, and how we think about it can morph going forward. But one thing my collaborator for the Center for Emotion and Materiality, Serbi Saraf, said, was quote by her or someone else, but physical distancing isn't social distancing. And I do strongly believe in that. The way of how, this goes, as we go further, how it will change, that's questionable. But for now, I think what I found very helpful for my psychological health, or is through really, like, not just so much of social media or you're blasting out your thoughts of vulnerability, but about just really reaching out to somebody. I mean, that's what I've been doing in the morning. If I think of somebody, message, or call, or being able to just, hey, I've been thinking about you. How are you doing? We haven't talked in a while. And so I think those, like, one-on-one kind of micro interactions would be really helpful. And also, I'm doing those things on social media. You can do it too. And those kind of ways of, it doesn't have to be circulating on a massive, like, platform scale. It could even be like, hey, I danced in my living room today, and send it to another friend. And that might totally make that person's day. And I think there's a lot of ways of that creativity can be rethought during this time. And that's the hope that I have, hopefully, with the technology that enables you to be able to be still in touch with their people, being able to share, your presence within their person. And so I still have, I'm trying to think about what to make out of a lot of the dire sides of technology, like surveillance. They're watching us. They see how many times we're interacting with this person during this circumstance. But right now, I do feel like it's a time for also attending to this, and self-care, I think, is helping others at this time as well. And so that's something that I strongly feel about. And we could talk about technology another time, but for now, I think being human and being available when needed is the most important part.
Well, I wanted to see if anyone had questions for Laura. You can chat them if you want, or I think you can unmute yourself. Still figuring out the best format for these things.
I have a question.
Yes.
So Laura, I love the absurdity of at least portions of your work, and I'm just wondering if you can, is that absurdity meant, and Blair called it satire, is it intended to be a reflection on the sort of wild west that is the internet, and the fact that it's this sort of democratic universe of the internet? Anyone can say or do anything, and there is this actual level of absurdity there. And I also wondered if there were any kind of art historical models or anything else informing the way that you take on that absurdity? So that's my question.
Yeah, I mean, very obvious reasons, of course, Dada, and the spontaneity and political acts through random, juxtapositions, that things that aren't meant to fit, making them fit, I think has influenced a lot of the way I work, and also a big fan of Nam June Paik and happenings, Alan Capro, and blurring a lot of art and life, and because I think so much of what I do is based on body-centric performances, I think the absurdity, when it's one of those things where I like to oftentimes spatialize the way I think or my thoughts and ideas, and when they all kind of, if you have a mylar and you stack them together and you see through it, oh, there's an orange here, but why is there a frying pan? And that's kind of like the way my mind works, I think. And it's absurd in here, and if I bring it out, why is it still absurd? And so those are the kind of things I constantly think about. And so, and of course, in the internet, the way you navigate through it, even on one website, and this is not just me, it's just like, of course, it's a lineage of a lot of new media artists and post-print artists that have influenced the way that I think right now. But website, and you have these advertisements for instance, what's the most ridiculous thing? Shoes for dogs. And then you have a post from your dear friend talking about a wonderful vacation. And then you have an advertisement for, I don't know, like a lactose intolerance. And all of these things, I think we are exposed to absurdity constantly online, and it gets even more ridiculous when you start going into different feeds and start, let's say, even like posts, for instance, of various people posting about their day, how disconnected they are. And so I think the absurdity is present within the current culture. And for me, it's something that I just don't think it's absurd as much, but a lot of that kind of comes from, I'm also interested in connecting different things and see how they work, and yeah, I think it just emerges naturally for me, but it's definitely informed a lot from various artists who use their body, who use video as a medium, and then the internet artists and the net artists who have played with the with digital culture, with the whole form itself. And so it's a blob again, but yeah, and how also like how fickle language is, like how you can write a sentence that's absurd, but when you see it, it feels even more absurd than even just reading about it. I love reading poetry when I feel very and I need gaps in life or mental break. And I think when I think about that form, reads the spaces in between sentences or even proses, and those are the type of moments that inspire me. And so it's absurd, I get it, but artists are pretty weird.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions for Laura? There was also one more video.
I have one more. If nobody, I don't want to hog it. Anybody else want to jump in? So I don't. I saw this very disturbing report this morning on. It was like the Today Show. It was national news, and it was this town in. I can't remember if it's Connecticut or upstate New York. Some small town. The police there are testing this. They've been using drones for some time for various purposes, but they're testing these drones who can identify people who have elevated temperatures as they're like traversing the community. And I don't know why, when I was watching your Fitker size video again, where you turn yourself on with the TV remotes and this sort of almost physical melding of technology and humanity, and how that has such a can have such a dark, creepy side to it. That seems to be something else that you exploit in your work.
Yeah, drones. I think I recently read also about a research on they weren't drones. There was something else that was identifying pedestrians versus bicyclists through the forms and actions. I think is research conducted at Stanford. But anyways, yeah, I think there's definitely, it's all around us. It's nothing new, and that's an interesting thing about information for me, that the more you're exposed to it, the more you start to really, you start guessing about everything around you. And the eeriness, and with the powering on, it's an absurd act, as absurdity as we talked about earlier, but it's, yeah, there's something like, I don't have words for it right now, but the eerie and unsettling, maybe undertone, I think is something that I'm always, within the humor, that's always been pretty present in what I do. There is a creepy aspect about it, but what I'm interested in more is not so much about feeding off of the fear or feeding off of the, oh my gosh, the worries of it, but more so that like surfacing enough so that's uncomfortable, but not intolerable. And so, and it's interesting because like some of the way I work through ideas is through seeing like an article or seeing things happening and then responding it through various other subjects. So recently I finished a piece that is about soul cycling with raccoons. And yeah, exactly. And so, so a lot of these kind of expressions come through other ways, but it's creepy. I mean, it's inherently there, but it's not a way, it's not a deterrent. It's more of a way for me to, hey, there's this thing, you see it and you feel it, but let me try to help capture it because I'm feeling it too. And so that's the eerie tone, if that answers your question. That's something that I'm very interested in. So it's the line, it's the very fine, how far can you go but it's never, I'm not really interested in like going all the way and like for it to be like, oh, there's all this gore, there's all these like chaos. I like to use the term controlled chaos or orchestrated chaos when I describe some of the things I do, which is still pertained within, yeah, a certain type of language that I speak through. As much as I can process, if I can process what's happening, then hopefully others who are watching the work can process it too. So, yeah. That's a very long-winded answer.
Well, thanks, Laura. We are a few minutes over, but there was one more video. Maybe I'll share the link in the chat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. So there was a more recent video. I don't know if you want to say a few words about it real quick.
So it's a video about, it's a great continuation with Get Fit or Die, but it's about lotioning. And so my hands have been very dry lately, and it's called a virtual lotioning session. And borrowing similar, you know, let's think about if Bob Ross was at Home Goods and picked up a bottle of lotion to create the most beautiful self-portrait ever, what would that look like? And so it's a step-by-step video and you can definitely participate at home.
Yep, I just put the link, which is also the link to Laura's Vimeo channel, in the chat. So if you want to check that out and watch the video, and you can follow along at home. And yeah,
thanks so much for
get into your day. Yeah, thank you so much for talking with me, Laura. It was really good to get a chance to do this.
All of you.
Yep. And thank you, all of you, for being here and talking with us. We do have more online programs we're doing. So if you go to arlingtonartscenter.org, we've got links there to programs with artists, to classes, to workshops, and we'll be announcing more things coming up. So thank you, everyone, and I hope everybody has a good night and is staying safe and healthy. And we will see you all soon.
Thank you.